Are kids more expensive than ever?
100% they are.
It didn't cost this much for our parents to raise kids. Today's guest proves my point. Corinne Low knows what she's talking about. She's an economist at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, and she's a mom of two. And I asked her, why are kids so much more expensive now?
The reason is that we are kind of making something different. We are parenting, we are creating, we are investing, and that is expensive in both money, of course, but also time.
I'm Lindsey Stanberry, and this is Family Money. I've been interviewing people about their money stories for more than a decade, and I've been a mom for just about as long. Needless to say, I have lots of thoughts on kids and money.
You really talk about how women tend to feel uncomfortable talking about money.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
It's scary, right? I hear from people who want to have kids all the time. How do you actually afford to have a kid? But that's why we're here. That's what we're doing with Family Money. We're offering you advice and tips and tricks, and you're going to hear from amazing experts to help put you at ease. Welcome to Family Money. Corinne, I'm so glad you're here today.
Me too. Can't wait to dive into it.
We're going to start talking about this big question that drives potential parents a little crazy and actual parents super crazy, which is, why are kids so expensive? Mm-hmm. Are they more expensive than they used to be?
100% they are.
Yeah.
And the reason is that we are kind of making something different. Our model has changed from you're just keeping a person alive to you are building their human capital, which is what economists refer to for the sum total of their know-how and ability that they're going to use to be able to get a job, to survive in this, rapidly changing world, to compete on a career ladder in a society that's more unequal than ever before. And so we are no longer just protecting, we are parenting, we are creating, we are investing. And that is expensive in both money, of course, that's what we're going to talk about, but also time.
Right. And time and money are so closely connected, right? I'm a little scared, though. Building human capital, it sounds like a very big job.
It is a very big job. And that's why parents today spend more time with their kids, more active parenting time than at any point in recorded history.
Why have we seen this big structural shift?
So I think there were a few things that happened. One, I think, is a leap forward in science. It's like if you don't have the germ theory of disease, you don't know you're supposed to wash your hands, right? And so if you don't know that infancy and toddlerhood are shaping your child's later cognitive outcomes. If you don't have the studies showing that the more words that you speak to your child, the more they're going to earn as an adult. And in fact, we have studies showing what you do while they're in utero matters. Like the health and well-being of the mother matters for, again, how much they earn later on in life. So if you don't know that, those inputs result in certain outputs, that there's that connection, then we don't think that those inputs matter. If you go back to the 1980s or 70s or 80s, it was perfectly acceptable to just pop the infant in the playpen, right? Hand them a bottle. And then that also gets into not just parenting time, but costs. Because if you were to visit a daycare, 30 cribs, infant in each crib, not being held, not being talked to, way cheaper to provide that care model than it is to have what we have right now, which is a 4-to-1 infant to caregiver ratio.
Let's talk about two-income households and how this kind of fits in there.
Women started working in part to protect themselves from easier divorce and the fact that women had to kind of have a backup plan if their marriage kind of didn't work out long term. And that was one of the big reasons why women entered the labor force. And then I think you have those two-income households before childcare costs and intensive parenting explode. So this is a very recent phenomenon. And to show you that I don't think the connection isn't as strong about whether women work and how much time they spend with their kids, working moms today spend more time with their kids than stay-at-home moms in the 1970s, right? In the 1980s. So you have the rise of the two-income household, and then it's starting in the 1990s where parenting time explodes and where childcare costs start to explode. And that's where I think labor force participation and women's wages have stagnated, because then you end up on this kind of treadmill that you can't keep up with. Because now, you're trying to invest in your career, but you also have to invest in your children's human capital. So you're falling behind your male colleagues. You're not able to close that gender gap. Whereas meanwhile, men are still, able to invest because they're not doing as much investment at home, although their time has increased too. Men's parenting time has increased, but still just completely dwarfed by women. And then what you are earning, you feel like it's going straight to childcare. And so then that's leading some women to say, well, is this really worth it?
Yeah.
And for them to decide to stay home or to have, only part-time labor supply. And so we see women's labor force participation really start to level off.
Interesting.
There's some things about that are a little bit short-sighted when it comes to building and investing in women's careers.
Yeah. And can we talk about that being short-sighted? This is arguably a very short period of time that your child is requiring so much intensive care. But as you've written in your book, it also happens at that exact moment where most women and men's careers are taking off. And so that creates really kind of a catastrophe in some ways.
Exactly. And this is a period of life that I call the squeeze. And I use a data set called the American Time Use Survey to actually track time use over the life cycle. And I show that there's this period where there's this big mountain of childcare and housework time. And oh, by the way, it's this period where your career still requires investment and your income is still growing. And then because your income's still growing, those investments haven't paid off yet. You can't just throw money at the problem. So what women sometimes do is they say like, okay, maybe it's not worth it, right? And maybe I should, step out of my career. But the problem is, thinking about the dynamics of that situation, that because careers are things that grow, when you invest in them, you can't compare the cost of a year of childcare to your salary right now, right? The question is, if I'm investing in my career, what is the total increase in my lifetime earnings I'm able to get from that through getting through this period where I need to actually spend on childcare? Because that's short. You've got 3 years where you're paying for private childcare. This is not forever.
No. Do you think that families should be more strategic? I think that that's always a hard question. Like, money is obviously impacts raising a family, but nobody wants to be like, maybe you should space your kids out every 3 years versus like having them all at one time when you're going to be paying more.
Well, I thought you were going to ask something else, which is that what I am in favor of being strategic on is that like once I saw that data and I saw that this time and money crunch is like for such a limited period of time, I was just like, oh, okay, that changes the strategy, which is like just do whatever you can in that period to like make it work. Like even if it feels unsustainable, because it doesn't have to be sustainable, because that period's going to end. Your kid will go to pre-K and you will get that off of your book. So then the question is like, should we space our kids out more? You will make that mountain less high, but you'll also spread it out.
Make it longer.
So you've got to decide, right, in terms of your career, which one makes sense. And so I see women make both choices, and I don't think there's any wrong way to do it. I have kids who are 8 years apart. So I was out of the squeeze.
We're done.
And then I was like, let's just dive headfirst back into it. And I don't know if that was the most strategic decision.
Are there other expenses beyond childcare that you feel are impacting families' expenses?
Well, again, I always want to talk about time as well as money because time literally is money, because if you invest it in your career, then, you earn more money. And so like, I want to bring up travel sports. That's money as well as time, right? It's all the activities that we're paying for. It's all of the things that we feel, again, we need to invest to like make our kid, make their human capital grow, but also make them equal to their peers. And this is what some economists call the rugrat race, where it's like a nuclear arms race. It's actually like not efficient, but because, your neighbor's doing it, then you have to do it too, because, then their kid is going to have this on their CV when they apply to Harvard, And I see that, like the 17-year-olds with CVs. And I'm like, I don't think we need
kids with CVs. No, I'm all about finding the slacker moms who are not into this. Like, we're just sending our kids to the local little league. The most intense it gets is, the like one weekend where they have playoffs and they play 2 games and not 1.
And that is so important, is like what you just said, is like choosing your peer group, choosing your community so that you're not constantly comparing yourself to something that's not sustainable for you. Because as I said, the time investments, when you're comparing yourself, if you are a working mom and then your comparison group is all moms who work part-time or who, do not work at this moment in time. And then you're like, oh, but they're giving this to their kid. They're doing that. The birthday cupcakes are homemade and the baby food is, made in the food processor and all that, right? And like, it's not actually sustainable or possible for you to give your kid that. And so you're driving yourself crazy. So choose your comparison set and understand that like you've got to choose which investments you want to make where the return is actually there. You don't have to make every single investment, right? And the biggest thing for your kids' long-term success and well-being is your relationship and your mental health and well-being. And so if you don't put on your own oxygen mask first, where you're running to those 1,000 activities, or you're trying to make ends meet because you said yes to these things that you can't afford, that then you're snapping at the kids and you're so stressed out that you're crying when you get a bill in the mail or whatever. That was my mom growing up, was like crying when she got a bill in the mail, right? Well, that translates to the kid. So by protecting your boundaries around both time and money and being really strategic with those investment choices, then you're able to invest something much more important in your kid, which is really the relationship.
Is there anything else that you think families should be thinking about when it comes to the cost of kids to like dissuade their own anxieties and encourage them to have kids? I think one of the big things that I want to take away when families listen to this podcast is, yes, it's expensive, but it's also pretty great. Being a mom is pretty awesome. So how do you sort of reconcile these two competing things where it's expensive, but, you know, you want to have kids?
Well, I think to give ourselves back the agency to say that it's expensive because we are choosing to invest a certain amount in our kids because that's what we want, right? Yeah. So to put it back in like our choice, that there is actually a cheaper way to have kids and to like not give them anything that they want, right? And to choose like, you know, like lower quality childcare options, to like live in a less expensive city. You know, I'm an evangelist for that, but like there are cheaper ways to have kids and there's more expensive ways to do it, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same when people talk about child penalties for moms, when, you know, that you have kids and then you have this child penalty in your earnings. I try to flip it and to say, those are child investments, right? Yeah. So that's because instead of investing in her own human capital during that period, she was investing in her child's human capital because she wanted to, right? And that puts you back in the driver's seat. And so you're saying like, this isn't a reason not to have kids because like you can make choices to make it cheaper and you can decide what that looks like, right? And I also think then it's important for us to like maintain when we talk about this, talking about like the joy of parenthood and that there is so much joy that you can embrace. And it doesn't all have to be about like getting everything perfect and like putting every possible input into them, because one of the, again, most important inputs is like the time that you spend laughing together. Like that's building their human capital, right? And that's so joyful. Like that's something that like I want to do. And so I like also say like get rid of this idea of mom guilt, right? And reframe it as being about our desires. I don't feel guilty that I had to miss this because I was traveling for work. I'm sad because I wanted to be there because I enjoy spending that time with my kid. And then you get to see that you have choices about how you spend your time and trying to make your family as happy and as rich as possible, meaning rich, meaning fulfilled, right? And yes, there are trade-offs, and the trade-offs are what sometimes make it feel hard, but it's not impossible.
Right.
And again, the biggest message I have, just looking at the time use data, that period of the squeeze, it ends. It passes.
It does.
So you'll get through it, right? And you can do things to make it easier during that period, knowing that it's so time limited.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of shifting it so you're thinking about a period of time when you're investing in your family. That's really lovely. Thank you so much, Corinne.
Thank you, Lindsey. Always great to talk.
Yeah, so much fun. Next up, I'm talking to Amil Niazi, best-selling author of Life After Ambition, a good enough memoir. She's a writer for New York Magazine and mom of 3 based in Toronto. So we're talking all about kids and money and families and money. And the big topic is how expensive kids are. And you have 3 of them. 2 big expenses that people talk about that you have a little bit of control over are housing and cars. And there's kind of this feeling that like when you have more kids, you need to get a bigger house and a bigger car. And you kind of push back against that idea. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
I remember telling friends that I was pregnant with our third, and immediately the reaction was, are you going to move? Are you going to get a bigger house? And I had to laugh because it took every single penny we had to get the house we have in a great neighborhood in the city. We didn't have to move to the suburbs. Yes, we only have 3 small, teeny tiny bedrooms, but I grew up in apartments. I grew up in such different circumstances. I feel so wealthy. So the thought that like somehow we weren't wealthy enough to have 3, I think was just really offensive and insulting. And they also said, are you going to get a bigger car? We have like a Honda CRV. I think you call it a crossover type of thing. And I said, before I even committed to having a third, I researched if we would need a bigger car, if you could get 3 car seats into the back of a Honda CRV. Yeah. So don't worry, we're good. And I just think there is this idea, especially because I think millennial parents have this level that they're trying to achieve, which is the homes that they grew up in, which often were out in the suburbs, which often were quite big homes comparatively. And they think that's what you need to have kids. That's the level of success and financial comfort before having kids. And I just think that's so wrong because I grew up in, sharing a room with my 2 sisters and we loved it.
Yeah.
So I do think that we have to really be more honest about what you need to have kids. And I think that the discussion should be, are you psychologically, emotionally, mentally okay?
Right.
And the finances, I'm an optimist in that respect. So I feel like that stuff will work itself out. But if you're not really like okay in here, maybe that's the thing that we should say you should work on before you have children.
Right. The like psychological, emotional is somewhat more important than the money.
It's great to have both.
Yes.
But you know, as long as you can feed the kids and house them, does it have to be a McMansion? I don't think so.
Yeah. With babies comes so much stuff. I remember when I was like putting together my registry, I always tell a story. I went and visited a friend when I was very pregnant. And she had like 4 different things to place the baby in. And I came home and I called my mom and I cried. And I was like, I don't have enough places to put the baby down. What do you think is the like biggest thing that people really oversell for what new babies actually need?
All that stuff, all of the extra, like so many places to put the baby down.
So many places.
I have actually Madeline Donahue, who did the cover of my book. We were chatting recently because she also had a third not that long ago. And she was saying she puts the baby down in her dog beds. And she says the dogs never use the beds, but like that's the level of, whatever the babies are fine with. And I think it's all the bells and whistles, those socks that tell you how, if the baby's breathing or not. Even the snoo, which I used for my third, we really just need a safe place for them to sleep. I don't think you need a change table. I change my baby literally anywhere. I have diapers and wipes in every corner, every level of the house.
Yeah.
That's my change table. And I think you need a stroller.
Right.
And I think everything else, borrow it, inherit it, get it on Marketplace. But the last thing you need is to spend thousands of dollars on those extras.
On all the things. So you have 3. And I think on one hand, people say it gets way more expensive when childcare is involved. But arguably, it could also be cheaper if you already have this stuff. What's been your experience with it?
For sure, I didn't have to really acquire anything going down the line. And also, I don't know if this is your experience, but I feel I was so lucky. I had so many girlfriends that were pregnant and at different stages. So I never felt like I had to go out and buy stuff. I always had someone that I could borrow, one of those swings from, or we just have this like incredible secondhand rotation going on. Yeah. So I think anything I missed, I could borrow.
You could find.
But the childcare that's the scary one.
Right.
And we can get into it, but the only reason I had a third is because the cost of childcare significantly went down in Canada. And so I was able to make a decision based on that. Had that not happened, I don't think that we could have afforded to have a third.
Yeah, that makes a tough call. Yeah, the sort of mom underground trade of stuff is kind of amazing. When I was pregnant, I remember meeting someone once and she was like, you're going to have a baby and I have all these diapers. And she mailed me the diapers. That's how desperate, once you have the stuff and you're ready to get rid of it, it's like, please, anybody take it from me.
Exactly. And it's good karma. I gave so many things to friends and I got it all back. It's a very nice cycle of love, I think.
It is. It's fun to see your stuff being used by other babies, right? There's like a warmness to it. We had one of those Bjorn bouncers, and I think 3 or 4 other babies used it at one point or another. And it made me feel like, my baby is grown, but it's fun to see other babies in it.
Exactly.
Why do you think it's so hard, though, to to opt out. And I think it's especially hard with your first kid when you're kind of going into this unknown. But why do you think it's so hard for families to say, like, I don't need all this stuff, or I don't need a bigger house, or I don't need a better car?
I do think there's a lot of social pressure, especially if you, like you say, it's your first and you're amongst other women who are also have one. Mm-hmm. I think a lot changes once you start to have more than one. If you see that other people needed that stuff, because anything that works for your baby, you're going to be an evangelist about it, right? You're going to say, right. Oh no, you have to have X because that's the only place my baby slept. And so, you start putting that on your list. And then another mom says, no, you have to have Y. Yeah. And we don't talk about the fact that every baby is super different. Every baby has different needs. And so if it works for one, it may not work for the other. As a first-time mom, you're just thinking, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm going to buy everything and that's going to fix my problem. Isn't that what we do with everything? I'm upset. I'm going to go shopping. I'm sad. I need X. Like, it's a very simple process. Of course, parents are beholden to the same like capitalist urges that we all are, which is, I'm worried about this problem. I don't know if I have the tools to fix it. I'm going to go shopping and assume that if I buy that thing, it's going to work. And once you have more than one, you start to become a different type of evangelist and you start saying, don't bother getting that. All you need is this. And I think that's when you start to really like figure out, okay, you don't need all this stuff. You really just need like a few onesies and a crib and you're probably okay.
Did you have anything that I remember, I have such a clear memory of my son not sleeping and ordering in the middle of the night from Amazon one of those sleep suits, that make them look like little baby astronauts. Did you have anything like that you just decided at the last minute, like you needed this was going to fix all your problems?
Oh, I bought so much stuff in the middle of the night. That's the best time that's when moms be doing their best shopping.
For sure.
I ordered so many like sleep sacks, sleep suits. I have bought so many pumps, expensive pumps.
Yeah.
And then halfway through, I always remember being like, I'm not pumping. This is absurd. My kids only want breast milk and they only want it from me. And
they only want
I
it
have
fresh.
a $500 pump just like staring at me in the corner like, come on, just do it. But I too am a fool. I have bought so many things that don't work.
We all are. It's those crisis moments when you're just trying to fix it and you're so tired. And Amazon is so easy. And Prime just it's one click.
The one day, yes, it's like it'll be here in a few hours. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's totally understandable. But I'm just curious, aside from these like silly $20 purchases, obviously that's not what makes children expensive. Yeah. But would you have advice for parents? It's very scary to think about having one kid, let alone 2 or 3. Like, do you have any advice, even if it's like not easy to take, for parents as they're navigating these big, expensive children?
One, I think be realistic about what you can afford. I think budgeting is something that can be very scary and can feel overwhelming. But I think if you can sit down and really plot out what kind of family do you want to be? Do you want to spend your money on trips? And then you need stuff to make that happen. Do you want to spend your money on giving your kids experiences and lessons? Because that can be a very big expense. Yeah. Or camps or whatever it is. However you really want to function as a family and where you want to put that money, make the budget for that. It doesn't have to be, something scary and adultish. You just like, how do you want to be and how do you want to spend your time together and make that budget work for that reality? And also, you don't need so much stuff.
Yeah.
The expense for me comes from obviously daycare, childcare. That's the biggest one.
Right.
Think about how you realistically are going to navigate work and care. And don't think that you are just going to work from home and keep the baby home and that's how you're going to save money. Like, that is a huge mistake that people make and that it's very naive.
Yeah.
You cannot do both. It is very, very difficult. A baby is a full-time job. A job is a full-time job. Plan out how you're going to pay for that. And the rest I really think is like up to you and how you want to be as a family. I'm home in the summer, so we just hang around and we do fun stuff. Don't need to pay for a lot of camps. So I save a lot of money in that way. And like I said, childcare is close to $10 a day in Canada right now. So my childcare budget is like, compared to what I paid for my daughter just 5 years ago, It's remarkable. So those are our biggest expenses, really. And the rest is like hand-me-downs, borrowing things. Like we make it work because we wanted to have 3. And of course, we knew that it's going to be expensive. So how can we make it work for us to have 3, live in the city, and maintain a certain kind of lifestyle? You know, I also like to buy like natural wine and nice cheese. And so I have to like make it all work. So
right.
But I think budgeting is good. But yeah, I think you just figure out where you want to really spend that money and save for it.
Yeah, it's important to not forget yourself and your partner and your needs.
I think a lot of moms especially think they have to like sacrifice their clothing, their hair and makeup, like everything has to go out the window because it's for your child, and they're going out and buying these expensive clothes that aren't going to fit in a few months. And I thrift a lot of their clothes, or I get it secondhand.
Yeah.
And if I want something nice, I go out and I seek it out secondhand. Like I rarely buy new clothes for my kids because they don't fit.
I know.
In a few months.
Yeah.
Or they don't like it. Oh my God, that's the worst.
It's the worst,
when you
isn't
buy
it?
something nice and they don't like it, and now it's sitting in a closet somewhere.
Yeah.
Nightmare.
Yeah, we've got a struggle with shoes at our house. My son buys very nice shoes with my mom and then does not wear them for many different reasons.
And then you have to be like, wear them. We're going to see grandma. You
Yeah,
have to wear the
exactly.
shoes.
I don't care if they hurt your feet.
I love to also take care of myself. And I think it's very, very important that you don't forget that the family functions as a whole. And it's not all about sacrifice so that you can pour money into these kids. They don't need it. They don't need stuff. They often don't need these elaborate experiences. Like, give my kids a stick and some time in the mud, and they couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
I parent in a way that like maybe is very what now people would call like 70s, 80s style parenting.
Yeah, I always try to remind people that kids really like to just hang out and run around, and to let them have that space is really important. Well, thank you so much, Amil. It was so lovely to talk with you. It's been really fun.
Me too. Yes, I've had such a good time, and I hope that that the joy of parenting has come across, because that's really what it is.
Definitely, we can afford them, and they're wonderful.
They are wonderful, and I'm the happiest I've ever been, I think, in my career and just in my like mental and emotional life because of these children. So
it's so cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you loved this episode, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.